"Don't touch that microphone," Principal Marjorie Vale said, smiling as if mercy had a dress code. But Noah Bennett was already kneeling at the edge of the Willow Creek Academy stage. Denim jacket faded at the elbows, grease-dark fingers steady around a cracked silver microphone wrapped in black tape. Behind him, 12-year-old Lily Hart stood frozen in the spotlight, clutching a folded sheet of music to her chest while the auditorium laughed. In the front row, Vivian Hartwell leaned forward. Beside the curtain, 8-year-old Eli whispered, "Daddy." She looked scared. 3 hours earlier, the auditorium smelled like floor polish, warm dust, and expensive perfume that had not yet arrived. Noah had been alone near the side wall, tightening a speaker bracket while Eli sat on a folded chair with both hands wrapped around a paper cup of apple juice. The boy knew not to wander during school events. Noah had told him twice, not harshly, just with that low father's voice that made a rule feel like shelter. Overhead, the stage lights hummed. Somewhere in the booth, a monitor gave off a tiny electronic whine, the kind most people never heard, but Noah did. He paused with the screwdriver in his hand and looked up toward the soundboard. Nothing seemed wrong. Not enough to speak on. Not yet. Willow Creek Academy had dressed itself in kindness that evening. Blue banners hung from the balcony. Silver balloons framed the stage. Across the projection screen, the words "Every child deserves a voice" glowed in clean white letters, bright enough to make the old wood panels look holy. Teachers moved through the aisles with donation cards. Parents in tailored coats checked their phones. Marjorie Vale floated between them with a soft laugh, a cream-colored folder tucked against her ribs, touching shoulders, remembering names, making generosity look effortless. Noah kept to the edges because edges were honest. He had learned that after his wife died, after bills came in stacks, after people started speaking to him slowly because grief and poverty made them think he had become smaller, he fixed what he could. Door hinges, flickering lights, broken cafeteria carts. Tonight he was only there to keep the microphones alive and to let Eli watch a little music before bedtime. Then Lily Hart stepped out from the side curtain. She wore a simple blue dress that had been ironed carefully but not recently, and shoes polished so hard the scuffs looked like pale scars. She held a folded sheet of music against her chest with both hands. No one clapped at first. A few students whispered. One girl covered her mouth and laughed before anything had even happened. Noah saw Lily swallow. He saw her look at the microphone stand as if it were a bridge over deep water. Marjorie crossed toward her with that same polished smile and guided the cracked silver microphone into Lily's hand. For 1 second, Lily looked relieved. Then Noah glanced toward the mixer. The channel labeled L. Hart flickered alive, a thin red pulse under the glass. Lily lifted the microphone and breathed in. "Hello," she said. The speakers screamed with a dry metallic scrape, then died. Laughter broke across the middle rows like dishes hitting tile. Marjorie lifted her own microphone and spread one hand toward the audience, calming them without stopping them. "Sometimes courage begins in uncomfortable silence," she said gently. Noah did not move at first. He looked from Lily's shaking hands to the soundboard, from the soundboard to Marjorie's quick glance toward the booth. Eli slid off his chair and touched his father's sleeve. "Daddy," he whispered again, smaller this time. "She didn't do anything wrong." Noah set the toolbox down. The metal latch clicked louder than it should have. He stepped into the aisle, quiet as breath, and the laughter thinned but did not stop. And just before Marjorie turned to block him, Noah saw the impossible thing. Lily's microphone was dead in the room, but the red signal on the mixer was still blinking. The red signal kept blinking while the auditorium heard nothing, and that was the first thing Noah Bennett could not explain away. He stopped halfway down the aisle, one hand still on the handle of his metal toolbox, watching the tiny pulse on the mixer flash beneath the booth glass like a heartbeat trapped behind a wall. On stage, Lily Hart lowered the cracked silver microphone as if it had betrayed her personally. The laughter from the middle rows softened into whispers, but whispers could cut deeper because they pretended not to be knives. "Please remain seated," Marjorie Vale said, her voice warm through the house microphone. "We're having a small technical hiccup." "It's not her fault," Noah said quietly. Mr. Bennett. Marjorie turned toward him with a smile that never reached her eyes. Our maintenance gentleman can take a look after the program. The word gentleman landed polished and cold. A few parents looked him over then, not at his face, but at the faded denim jacket, the scuffed work boots, the grease shadow beneath his fingernails. Someone near the aisle murmured, "Is he supposed to be up there?" Another voice, lower, said, "Probably the one who set it up." Noah heard it. Eli heard it too. The boy's shoulders drew inward, but he stayed by the curtain like his father had told him, small hands gripping the edge of the toolbox as if obedience itself could hold the night together. Marjorie stepped closer to Lily and rested a careful hand behind the girl's shoulder. Not pushing, not quite, just guiding her into the place the camera wanted her to stand. Behind them, the projection screen changed. The glowing words, "Every child deserves a voice," faded into a soft focus video of Lily walking alone down a school hallway, carrying a lunch tray, her blue dress replaced by an older sweater in footage she clearly had not known was being used. The music underneath was gentle, piano notes falling like rain. It should have sounded compassionate. Instead, it made Noah's stomach tighten. Lily stared at the screen, and the color drained from her face. "I didn't say they could show that," she whispered, barely loud enough for the front row. Marjorie lifted her microphone before the whisper could become a question. "Friends," she said, turning to the donors with practiced tenderness. "Sometimes a child's silence tells us more than a prepared performance ever could." A ripple of approving sadness passed through the room. Not understanding, not respect, just that comfortable kind of pity people could feel from velvet seats. Without having to stand up, Noah took one more step forward. A staff member in a black blazer shifted into his path, palms open, polite as a locked door. "Sir, we need you off the center aisle." "The microphone still has signal," Noah said. "That means the problem isn't at the head." "Sir, let him check it," Eli said from the curtain, his little voice cracking. The staff member glanced at the boy, then away, as if a child's truth was too small to enter procedure. Noah looked back once, just enough to steady Eli without calling him into the fight. "It's all right, son," he said. "Stay where I can see you." Vivian Hartwell sat in the front row with the donor program open across her lap. She had not smiled since the video began. At first, she had watched Marjorie the way powerful people watch other powerful people, weighing tone, timing, usefulness. Now her eyes moved from Lily's trembling hands to Noah's stillness. He was not angry in the way men sometimes performed anger. He was not puffed up, not demanding the room recognize him. He was looking at the equipment like a man trying to keep a child from being blamed for a door someone else had locked. That made Vivian pause. Not trust, not yet, but pause. Marjorie saw the shift and moved quickly. "Mr. Bennett is very dedicated," she said into the microphone, giving Noah a public compliment that somehow felt like a leash. "He works hard behind the scenes, and we're grateful for all of our support staff. But tonight is about the students, not the equipment." A few donors nodded. One woman clutched her pearls and looked at Lily with wet eyes. On the screen, the donation video cut to a graphic scholarship story segment. Noah's gaze narrowed. That title had not been on the run sheet he had seen during setup. He looked toward the podium beside the stage, where a cream-colored paper lay under Marjorie's folder. The top line, visible beneath the edge, read "Solo Performance, 7:18 p.m. The screen behind Lily read something else entirely. Lily's fingers curled around the folded sheet of music pressed to her chest. The cracked silver microphone hung from her other hand, black tape catching the spotlight in a dull stripe. Noah noticed the way Marjorie's thumb tapped the folder once, twice, 3 times, and up in the booth. A young audio assistant leaned toward the board before catching himself. "This old microphone has been unreliable all week," Marjorie said smoothly. Noah's eyes flicked to her. All week. But at 5:10 that evening, he had checked every microphone himself. At 5:10 that evening, Noah Bennett had checked every microphone himself, and he remembered the silver one because Lily's name had already been taped to its stand in neat blue marker. He remembered the hairline crack near the grill, the loose ring at the bottom, the way the cable clicked cleanly when he seated it into the input. He remembered pressing a small white service label to the handle with his thumb. Tested 5:10 p.m. NB Noah did not trust memory when a child was being blamed, so he walked to the edge of the stage with the slow care of a man carrying water through a burning room. "Sir, this isn't necessary," the staff member said. "It is if she's holding it," Noah answered. "Mr. Bennett," Marjorie said, still smiling, "we appreciate your concern. Then let me concern myself with the microphone." The words were not loud. They did not challenge the room. They simply stood there, plain and immovable. A few people shifted in their seats. Velvet chairs creaked. Somewhere up in the balcony, a teenager snorted, then went quiet when no one joined him. Noah reached Lily and stopped a step away, careful not to crowd her. Up close, he could see the strain in her knuckles around the folded sheet music. Her thumb worried the edge of the paper until it had softened into a little white feather. The cracked silver microphone hung at her side, its black tape dull under the spotlight. "May I?" he asked. Lily looked at Marjorie first because children learn quickly which adults own the air in a room. Then she looked at Noah. He did not tilt his head in pity. He did not smile too hard. He did not act like rescuing her made him noble. He just held out one open hand, steady and patient. Lily gave him the microphone. It was lighter than it looked. The metal had gone warm where her hand had gripped it. Noah lowered himself to one knee, the old pain in his back pulling tight from a day spent under bleachers and inside ceiling panels. His work boot pressed into the stage floor, leaving a faint dust mark on the polished wood. He felt the eyes on his jacket, his hands, the place where the cuff of his sleeve had frayed near the wrist. He could almost hear what some of them were thinking. Maintenance, support staff, the man with a toolbox. That was all right. Tools were honest. Tools did not mind being underestimated. Eli stood by the curtain, hugging the metal toolbox against his chest. The boy's face was small and serious, his blonde hair falling into his eyes. He did not come closer. He did not play detective. He only watched his father kneel before a girl everyone else had left standing alone. "Is it broken, Daddy?" he asked softly. Noah turned the microphone in his hands, using his body to block Lily from the nearest camera. "Not the way they said," he murmured. Marjorie heard enough to move half a step nearer. "Let's be careful with speculation," she said, her voice smooth as cream poured over glass. "Children are very sensitive to adult tension." Noah did not answer that. He pulled the small screwdriver from his back pocket and loosened the ring at the bottom of the microphone. The cable end was seated, but not fully. Not loose enough to fall out. Not tight enough to carry clean signal without screaming. The kind of mistake that could happen once, maybe. The kind that troubled him because he had heard that dry metallic scrape before. Years ago in a church basement when an impatient volunteer had yanked a cord before a memorial service. His wife had still been alive then, sitting in the second pew, mouthing the words to a hymn because her heart was already weak and singing took too much breath. Noah swallowed the memory down. This was not about grief. This was not about the way music had left his house after she died. This was about a 12-year-old girl standing under a light too bright for her fear. He took the rag from his pocket, wiped the jack, and cleaned a thin smear of something dark from the metal sleeve. Not dust, not rust, a faint sticky residue like gaffer. Tape adhesive rubbed where it did not belong. He folded the rag once, hiding the mark without hiding the fact of it from himself. Then he wrapped the cracked edge of the microphone with a fresh strip of black tape, so Lily's palm would not find the sharp place again. "She can use another mic," Marjorie said. "We have plenty. This one has her name on the stand," Noah said. "Sometimes that matters." Vivian Hartwell's fingers tightened around the donor program in her lap. She saw that small choice. Not the repair, not the technical motion, but the dignity in it. Noah was not replacing Lily's microphone as if her moment could be swapped out like a battery. He was returning the one she had been handed, making it safe, making it work, refusing to let the room decide that the broken thing belonged to her. Still, Vivian did not trust him yet. She had spent too many years in rooms where men used gentleness as theater. But this man kept turning away from the applause that had not come. That was harder to fake. Noah tightened the ring, pressed his thumb over the white service label, and saw the ink again. Tested 5:10 p.m. NB. He had written it himself in block letters because evening events got messy and memory got challenged. The label was still clean. The crack was old. The adhesive smear was new. He lifted the microphone toward Lily with both hands. "You deserve a working microphone," he said. Lily stared at him, then took it like it might break if she believed too quickly. Her folded sheet music slipped slightly, and for a breath Noah saw a line of handwriting across the top before she pressed it back to her chest. For Lily, when the room gets too loud, he did not ask about it. He did not let his eyes linger. Children were allowed to keep some things private, especially in rooms that had already taken too much. Marjorie's smile thinned. To her, Noah had done nothing grand. He had only cleaned a jack, tightened a ring, and wrapped tape around a crack. A small, forgettable kindness from a small, forgettable man. But when the microphone touched Lily's hand again, the red signal on the mixer jumped clean and bright, and Vivian Hartwell looked from the service label to Marjorie's folder as if the smallest repair in the room had just opened the first locked door. The red signal jumped clean and bright, and for one breath the auditorium seemed ready to forgive itself. Then the speakers gave a soft click, Lily's frightened inhale slipped through for half a second, and the sound vanished again as if someone had closed a door over her mouth. This time no one laughed right away. The silence was thinner, uncertain, threaded with the little noises people make when they do not want to admit they have seen something wrong. A chair leg scraped. A phone lowered. Somewhere in the back, a cough died halfway out. Noah Bennett stayed on one knee, the cracked silver microphone still in Lily Hart's hand, and looked up toward the booth glass. He did not raise his voice. He did not point at anyone. He simply watched the mixer because machines had a way of telling the truth before people were ready to. "Well," Marjorie Vale said, her smile returning like a curtain pulled quickly over a broken window. "It seems the connection is still unstable. Lily, sweetheart, why don't we take a pause?" "It spoke," Eli said from beside the curtain. His small voice was not loud, but it carried into the pocket of quiet near the stage. "I heard her breathe." A few adults looked at him as if a child had wandered into a room of paperwork. Noah glanced back once, not to silence his son, but to steady him. Eli pressed his lips together and held the toolbox tighter, understanding he had already said enough. Marjorie tilted her head with professional softness. "That was feedback, honey. These things can be confusing." Noah rose slowly, feeling the old stiffness in his knees, and set the screwdriver on the edge of the stage where everyone could see both his hands. "It wasn't feedback," he said. "It was input." The word was plain, but it changed the air. The parent in the third row who had been filming lowered her phone. A man wearing a school board lapel pin leaned forward. Vivian Hartwell did not move, not visibly, but her eyes sharpened over the top of the donor program. She had heard hundreds of men make claims in boardrooms, courtrooms, offices polished enough to reflect their confidence. Noah's claim sounded different. It sounded like he would rather not be making it at all. That made it harder to dismiss and harder to trust. After all, he was the man who had set up the equipment. If something had failed, his name was already on the white service label. Tested 5:10 p.m. NB. A small piece of paper could prove diligence, or it could become the first thing used against him. Marjorie seemed to understand that before anyone else did. "Mr. Bennett," she said, turning slightly so the audience could see her calm and his work clothes in the same frame. "I know you're trying to help, but we cannot have support staff improvising technical decisions in the middle of a student program. It places pressure on the child." Lily flinched at the word child, not because it was untrue, but because Marjorie said it like a lid. Noah looked at Lily before he looked at anyone else. "Do you want me to step back?" he asked her. She swallowed. The folded sheet music trembled against her chest. "I don't want them to play that video again," she whispered. The words were small, but they found Vivian. Her fingers tightened around the program, creasing the heavy paper down the center. Marjorie's eyes flicked to Vivian, then to the booth, then back to the crowd. Too fast. Too smooth. The video is part of our donor education, she said. It helps our community understand the realities our scholarship students face. Does Lily understand it's being shown? Noah asked. The room slowed down around that question. Not because it was loud, because it was simple. Marjorie's smile thinned by the width of a thread. Consent forms are handled through the proper school channels. That's not what I asked. The stage lights hummed overhead. Lily stared at the black tape around the microphone, thumb rubbing the fresh edge Noah had wrapped there, grounding herself against something that had been made safe. In the booth, the young audio assistant moved one hand toward the board, then stopped when he noticed the parent with the camera still aimed upward. Noah followed the movement with his eyes. The main meter for L. Heart was not flat. It was alive, flickering in. Thin red bars. But the house output showed nothing. Then Noah saw the second line beneath it, smaller, half hidden by the angle of the glass. Fundraiser capture. The bars there moved every time Lily breathed near the microphone. Noah stepped toward the side stairs, not onto the booth platform, just far enough to see the labels more clearly. The staff member in the black blazer shifted again to block him. Sir, you need authorization. I'm not touching the board, Noah said. I'm reading it. The technical booth is restricted. Then read it for me. The staff member blinked. Noah nodded toward the screen behind the glass. Why is her microphone muted in the room but still going to fundraiser capture? The phrase landed awkwardly, too specific to be emotional and too visible to be ignored. A murmur moved through the front rows. Vivian's head turned toward the booth. For the first time that night, she looked not at Lily, not at Noah, but at the machinery behind Marjorie's kindness. Marjorie gave a soft laugh, almost convincing. All performances are routed to archival recording. It's standard for fundraising events. Performances, Noah said. He looked at Lily, still standing with no song behind her, only humiliation. She hasn't been allowed to perform. Marjorie's face held, but her thumb tapped the cream folder once, twice. Not 3 times this time, because she caught herself. That was when Vivian noticed the folder. That was when Noah noticed the donation video file still paused on the screen, ready to resume. And that was when the first truly cold thought entered him. Lily's voice had been silenced in the auditorium, but her fear had been recording perfectly somewhere else. Noah kept his eyes on the words fundraiser capture until they stopped looking like a technical label and started looking like a confession. Lily's fear had not been lost in the room. It had been collected. The thought made something old and protective rise in him, but he held it down with the same discipline he used when Eli dropped a glass at breakfast or when bills arrived with red letters across the top. Panic never fixed wiring. Anger never made a child safer. He turned to the staff member blocking the stairs and spoke softly. I need 10 seconds with a spare input. No, Marjorie said before the staff member could answer. We are not turning this evening into a repair workshop. 10 seconds, Noah repeated. In front of whoever you choose. Mr. Bennett, you've already disrupted the flow. Then let the equipment prove me wrong. The room went quiet in a different way then. Not silent, not yet, but quieter, as if everyone had leaned 1 inch closer without admitting it. A school board member near the front, Mr. Callahan, adjusted his glasses and looked toward the booth. Beside him sat a father with a salt and pepper beard and a small pin from the local community theater on his blazer. Noah had seen him before during winter concerts, always near the cables, always checking speakers with the tired affection of a volunteer who knew what feedback could do to a room. I can look, the man said. Marjorie's smile warmed toward him instantly. Daniel, there's really no need. It'll take 10 seconds, Daniel said, already standing. Vivian Hartwell watched the exchange without moving her head. Her thumb slid across the edge of her phone beneath the donor program, and a moment later her assistant, seated 2 rows back, looked down at a message. Vivian did not announce anything. She did not stand. She simply made sure someone else was watching what the room might later pretend it had missed. Up in the booth, the young audio assistant stepped back as Daniel entered. Noah stayed below the booth stairs where everyone could see him. He placed both hands on the railing, away from the board. "Take the silver mic out of channel 4, Noah said. "Put it into the spare input. Label doesn't matter. Just a clean line to house." Daniel glanced down. "Channel 12 is open. Use 12. "This is unnecessary," Marjorie said, but the words came softer now. Lily stood at center stage, the cracked silver microphone in both hands, fresh black tape wrapped over the sharp place. Her folded sheet music pressed against her wrist. Eli had moved only enough to see his father through the curtain gap. He was still hugging the toolbox, but his shoulders had lowered. A little, as though the grown-ups were no longer all made of thunder. Daniel unplugged the cable from channel 4. The speakers gave a tiny hollow pop. He plugged it into channel 12. Noah looked at Lily. "Can you tap it once? Just with your finger." Lily hesitated. "I don't have to sing?" "No," Noah said. "Just tap." She touched the grill with one finger. A clean, gentle thump rolled through the auditorium. Not loud, not dramatic, just true. The sound moved across the room and came back in the rafters, and the effect was strange. A woman who had been whispering stopped mid-sentence. A boy in the middle row lowered his phone into his lap. The air conditioning suddenly seemed louder than the people. Daniel looked down at Noah from the booth. "Mic works." Noah nodded once. "No victory. No smile." He turned slightly so Lily could see his face before she saw the crowd. "That part is settled." For the first time that night, Lily breathed without looking like she was asking permission. Marjorie clasped her folder with both hands. "Wonderful. Then Daniel can reset the board, and we'll continue privately after a short intermission." "Put it back on channel 4, Noah said. Daniel paused. Marjorie's eyes sharpened. "Why would we do that?" "Because that's the channel they gave her. It is obviously unstable." Noah looked up at Daniel, not at Marjorie. "Please." Daniel moved the cable back. The silver microphone returned to channel 4. Lily tapped the grill again. The meter on the board jumped. Everyone who could see the booth monitor saw the signal move. But the auditorium speakers gave nothing. "No tump. No brace." No mistake for anyone to hide behind. Daniel frowned and leaned closer to the screen. "The channel is live," he said. "But house output is muted." Noah kept his voice low. "Check the log." "The log is not relevant to the children's program," Marjorie said quickly. Too quickly. Vivian's hand settled flat on the donor program, stopping its paper edges from trembling. Mr. Callahan stood halfway, not fully committed, but no longer seated comfortably. Daniel clicked through the digital menu. The screen inside the booth glowed blue against his face. The assistant beside him looked like he wished the floor might open. "There's an override," Daniel said. "Timestamp 6:42. A murmur broke, then folded in on itself when Vivian lifted one finger without looking back. Her assistant raised his phone and began recording the booth screen from the aisle. Noah noticed and said nothing. "What kind of override?" Mr. Callahan asked. Daniel swallowed. "Admin override. Preset loaded." Marjorie gave a controlled little laugh. "That's standard for the scholarship segment. We use presets all the time for donor events. It saves the students from technical stress." The room stilled around the phrase, scholarship segment. Daniel had not read the preset name aloud yet. Noah slowly looked from the booth screen to Marjorie's cream folder. Vivian looked there too. Even Lily, who did not understand mixers or presets or adult politics, understood that the principal had answered a question before it had been asked. Daniel's voice came thinner now. "The preset name is scholarship segment." Nobody laughed. A chair stopped dragging somewhere in the back. The air conditioner hummed like a machine in an empty church. Noah stepped away from the railing, giving the sight line to Mr. Callahan, Daniel, Vivian, anyone except himself. He would not make Lily stand inside another spectacle if he could help it. "That proves the microphone works," he said. "It proves channel 4 was muted by a preset. It doesn't prove why." Marjorie seized the small opening. Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. A technical misunderstanding. We can resolve this privately and spare Lily further discomfort. Lily's fingers tightened around the microphone at the sound of her name. Noah saw it. Vivian saw it. The difference was that now Vivian also saw how quickly Marjorie reached for privacy the moment public evidence appeared. No, Vivian said at last. The word was quiet, but it landed with the full weight of every check the school had hoped she would write that night. Marjorie turned toward her, smile ready. Vivian, I promise we have this under control. Do not turn off that screen, Vivian said. Not yet. Daniel froze with his hand near the console. The assistant pulled his hand back from the mouse. Noah felt Eli's eyes on him from the curtain, frightened but proud in the small, solemn way children become proud when they see a parent choose trouble for the right reason. Noah did not look for praise. He only turned to Lily and lowered his voice. You don't have to do anything right now. She looked down at the folded sheet music, then at the microphone that had worked only when removed from the channel chosen for her. Marjorie opened her folder to cover the top page, but not before Noah saw a printed line inside, half hidden under her thumb. Lily pause, audience discomfort. And in that brief, cold glimpse, the muted microphone stopped being the problem and became the first door into something much larger. The words Lily pause, audience discomfort stayed under Marjorie Vale's thumb for less than a second, but Noah Bennett had spent half his life reading what people tried to cover with their hands. Aluo seguir. A cracked pipe. A past-due bill turned face down on a kitchen table so a child would not worry. Small things hidden poorly often told the truth first. He did not reach for the folder. He did not accuse her. He only looked at that cream-colored edge of paper, then at the muted channel on the booth screen, and then at Lily Hart, still standing in the spotlight with the cracked silver microphone held carefully between both hands. That page, Noah said quietly. Marjorie closed the folder with a soft clap. That page is internal programming material. It has her name on it. Many pages have student names on them, Mr. Bennett. Then it won't hurt to let the board see it. The auditorium shifted. Not loudly. There was no gasp, no theatrical thunder, just the dry whisper of expensive coats against velvet seats, and the low electric hum of projectors throwing Lily's frozen donation image across the back wall. Vivian Hartwell watched Marjorie's hand on the folder. Her face had gone still in the way powerful women become still when they are no longer deciding whether something is rude, but whether it is dangerous. Marjorie turned toward Vivian at once, lowering her voice as if privacy itself were a gift. Vivian, I'm so sorry for this disruption. Why don't we step into the reception room and I'll walk you through our scholarship media process. Vivian did not rise. Bring the process here. Marjorie blinked once. This is hardly the place. It became the place when you played that child's hallway footage behind her. The room went quiet enough for Noah to hear Lily's breathing through the monitor line still open in the booth. Thin, uneven, trying not to become sobs. He stepped closer to the stage, not toward Marjorie, but toward Lily. You can sit down if you want, he said. No one gets to decide that for you. Lily looked at the chair near the piano, then back at the crowd. Her chin trembled. If I sit, they'll say I couldn't do it. Noah felt that sentence in his ribs. He had heard its older versions in garages, hospitals, school offices, and grocery lines. If I ask for help, they'll say I failed. If I cry, they'll say I'm weak. If I stay quiet, they'll call it proof. He nodded slowly. Then stand because you choose to, not because they cornered you. Vivian looked down at those words as if they had landed on the donor program in her lap. Then she opened her phone under the shadow of the paper and sent another message. This time her assistant left the row and moved toward the side aisle, not in panic, but with purpose. Daniel, still in the booth, had not touched the screen since Vivian told him not to. The blue glow of the service log lit his face. There's more history under the preset, he called down carefully. Marjorie's head turned. Daniel. He paused. He was a parent first, a volunteer second, and that made him harder to command than staff. I'm not changing anything, he said. Just reading what's already there. Noah held still. If he pushed too hard, Marjorie would make him the story. Angry maintenance man disrupts student event. Poor single father embarrasses school. He could already hear the clean, polished version of the lie. So he did what he had done his whole life when something fragile was in his hands. He made room for someone else to verify it. Read the timestamps, Noah said. Daniel swallowed. 6:36, donation video armed. 6:42, admin override, preset scholarship segment. 6:44, channel 4 routed to fundraiser capture. 6:45, house output mute locked. 6:58, lobby doors open. Mr. Callahan, the school board member, stood fully now. The doors opened after the channel was already routed? Daniel nodded. Yes. The small fact passed through the auditorium like a cold draft. Before donors entered, before Lily walked on stage, before any hiccup could be blamed on pressure or chance, the path of her microphone had already been changed. Marjorie smiled again, but this time the expression had to climb a hill to reach her face. We prepare all student media in advance. It prevents confusion. Noah looked at the projection screen, where Lily's paused face was still caught mid-step in a hallway she had not known would become public. Prepared for what? He asked. Marjorie's answer came too fast. To inspire donors. She stopped, but the word had already left her. Inspire. Vivian's eyes lifted. Lily heard it too. Her shoulders drew inward, and the folded sheet music slipped from beneath her wrist, fluttering to the stage floor with a small paper sigh. Noah bent at once, not quickly enough to startle her, and picked it up by the corner. He meant only to return it. But the stage light passed through the thin paper, and the handwriting across the top became clear for one quiet second. For Lily, when the room gets too loud. Noah froze, not because he understood it, but because the sentence was too tender to belong to a fundraising packet. He handed it back without reading further. Keep this with you, he said. Vivian had seen it. The change in her was almost invisible, but Noah noticed the donor program fold in her hand until the paper buckled. Her lips parted. No sound came. She stared at the sheet music the way a person stares at a door in a house they thought had burned down years ago. Where did you get that? Vivian asked, but her voice was not public now. It was barely a thread. Lily clutched the page. I've always had it. Marjorie moved between them gently, too gently. Lily's personal items are not part of this discussion. They are if you used her image without letting her speak, Vivian said. And they are if this song is what I think it is. Noah turned his head slightly, enough to catch Vivian's face but not enough to make Lily feel examined. Vivian was no longer acting like a donor offended by bad management. She was acting like someone standing at the edge of a private grief. Her hand went to her handbag. From a small inner pocket, she drew out an old phone, the kind people keep not because it works well, but because it holds something they cannot bear to lose. The case was worn at the corners. A faded sticker of a tiny gold music note clung near the camera lens. Vivian did not play anything yet. She only held it, thumb hovering over the screen. Lily's own hand went to her necklace, a small scratched music note pendant resting against her collarbone. The movement was instinctive, protective. As she touched it, the pendant clicked open by accident or habit, and something pale showed inside, folded smaller than a postage stamp. A strip of old hospital tag. Noah saw only 2 letters before Lily pressed it shut again. Elash. He looked away immediately. Whatever lived in that necklace belonged to Lily before it belonged to any adult's need for answers. Marjorie saw enough to understand danger, if not meaning. A bead of sweat slipped from beneath her hairline, catching in the stage light before she brushed it away. This is exactly why we should pause, she said. The child is overwhelmed. We can handle everything appropriately after the guests leave. Noah turned to her then, his voice low enough that the first rows had to lean in. Ma'am, whatever that paper means, she's still 12. Vivian's eyes closed for half a second. When she opened them, she looked not at Noah's jacket or his work boots, but at the space he was protecting around Lily. He had seen the necklace. He had chosen not to take it. He had seen Vivian react. He had chosen not to use it. That was not weakness. That was discipline with mercy inside it. Daniel's voice came again from the booth, quieter now. There's a file attached to the cue sheet. Mr. Callahan looked up. What file? Daniel hesitated. A video file. Same title as the screen. Scholarship story segment. Notes say, Lily pause, audience discomfort, donation appeal. For a moment, even the projector seemed to hum softer. Vivian's old phone rested in her palm. Lily's sheet music trembled against her chest. Noah's service label still clung to the microphone in block letters. A small white witness that the equipment had worked before someone decided Lily's silence was more useful than her song. Marjorie reached for the folder again, but Mr. Callahan stepped into the aisle and said, "Don't move that." And with the evidence now sitting in the open, under auditorium lights, the truth had become too heavy to carry into a private room. The auditorium did not empty, and that was what made the next few minutes feel heavier than any closed-door meeting ever could. The donors stayed in their velvet seats, the students sat stiff in the middle rows, the teachers lined the aisles with their hands folded too tightly, and the stage lights kept shining on the same place where Lily Hart had first been laughed at. Nothing had moved far. The cracked silver microphone was still in Lily's hands. The cream-colored folder was still on the podium. The screen behind her still held the frozen scholarship image, her hallway face trapped beneath the words, "Every child deserves a voice." Noah Bennett stood off to the side, not in the spotlight, not beside Vivian Hartwell, not near enough to look like a man claiming victory. He stood where maintenance men stood when something might break again. Close enough to fix it, far enough to disappear if the truth no longer needed him. Marjorie Vale took the center of the stage as if she could still restore the evening by standing in the proper place. Her smile had become smaller, but it remained. That was her gift. She could make control look like concern. "Friends," she said into the house microphone, and the words slid across the room with practiced warmth. "We have had an unfortunate misunderstanding. A technical issue, a sensitive student, and a well-meaning employee have all converged in a way that may appear more dramatic than it is." A few adults nodded because relief is easy to accept when it comes dressed as reason. Marjorie turned toward Lily with soft eyes. No one here intended to embarrass this child. Noah saw Lily's shoulders tighten. Not because Marjorie had shouted, because she had used that word again. Child. Not Lily. Not singer. Not student. Child, as if her name had become inconvenient. Mr. Callahan stepped into the aisle with the careful posture of a board member who understood that every sentence now mattered. "Principal Vale, the board needs to review the materials Daniel found." "Of course," Marjorie said, "through the appropriate channels." "Now," Vivian said. She had not raised her voice. She did not need to. Her old phone rested in one hand, her donor program in the other, and the folded crease across the paper looked like a wound. Marjorie turned to her. "Vivian, I respect your concern deeply, but we also have a responsibility not to turn a vulnerable student into a public investigation." It was a strong answer, polished, almost noble. For a moment it worked. The room softened toward it, because no decent person wanted to hurt Lily more. That was the first spike in the pressure. Marjorie had found the one argument that could make silence look merciful. Noah lowered his eyes, and for half a breath even he felt the danger of pushing further. Truth could protect a child, but mishandled truth could also become another stage. He looked at Lily. Her fingers held the microphone with one hand and the folded music with the other. Eli stood just behind the curtain, small and pale, watching his father like he was learning what courage looked like when it did not raise its fists. Noah stepped only one pace forward. "She doesn't have to be investigated," he said. "The equipment does." The sentence settled cleanly. Not revenge. Not accusation. A door. Daniel in the booth nodded, grateful for something solid. "I can show the routing without showing anything personal." Marjorie turned quickly. "Daniel, I don't think that's necessary. It's already on the screen," he said. "And the board member is here." A quiet shift moved through the room. Noah had not cornered her. Procedure had. Daniel brought the booth display onto the side projection screen, not the large donor screen, but the smaller technical display used during rehearsals. The image was plain blue and gray, ugly in the honest way machines are ugly. Channel 4. Elart. Service label time from the maintenance checklist. Tested 5:10 p.m. NB admin override at 6:42 p.m. Preset loaded. Scholarship segment. House mute locked. Route active fundraiser capture. Noah kept his face still as each line appeared. He could feel eyes turning toward him at the initials. NB. His name was on the first proof, and that meant his name could still be twisted into blame. Marjorie saw the opening. Exactly, she said almost gently. Mr. Bennett tested the microphone. Later, a preset loaded incorrectly. It happens. We rely on staff volunteers' software. No one acted maliciously. A murmur of possible forgiveness moved through the back rows. There it was, the second attempt to win back the room. Make the truth complicated enough that no one felt responsible. Noah looked down at his hands. Grease in the creases. Tape adhesive on one thumb. He did not hate Marjorie in that moment. Hating her would have been simpler. Instead, he hated the ease with which a child's humiliation could be turned into a clerical error. Then the cue sheet should match, he said. Marjorie's smile stopped moving. Vivian's head turned slowly toward him. Noah did not reach for the folder. He looked at Mr. Callahan. The public run sheet on the podium says solo performance at 7:18. The screen says scholarship story segment. The booth log says the preset changed before the doors opened. Those are 3 different stories for one child. Mr. Callahan walked to the podium. Marjorie moved as if to help him, but Vivian's assistant, now standing in the aisle with her phone recording, said, "Please leave the folder where it is." It was polite. It was devastating. Mr. Callahan opened the cream-colored folder. The stage lights reflected off his glasses as he read. He did not read everything aloud. He had enough sense not to turn Lily's pain into a list. But his mouth tightened when he reached the line Noah had seen. Daniel enlarged the camera feed from the booth archive onto the side screen. It showed the soundboard. 10 minutes before Lily came out, the young audio assistant sat at the console. Marjorie stood beside him, cream folder in one hand. There was no sound on the feed at first, only the silent motion of authority leaning close to uncertainty. Marjorie spoke quickly. "That camera has no context. I routinely check with technical staff before student segments." "Then let it play," Vivian said. Marjorie's eyes flashed toward the booth, and for the first time all night, the mask did not fully catch it. The assistant on the footage looked nervous. He pointed to Channel 4. Marjorie gave one small nod. His hand moved to the controls. In the live auditorium, the same assistant stepped backward from the booth wall, his face drained. Lily saw him and looked down, not with anger, but with the exhausted recognition of a child realizing the adults had known more than they said. Noah turned to her. "You can leave," he said quietly, "or you can stay. Both are brave." Lily looked at the cracked silver microphone, then at the folded sheet music. Her thumb brushed the words at the top, the words only she could see from where she stood. "I don't want to be their sad story," she whispered. Noah's voice softened. "Then don't be. Be your song." Vivian heard it. So did Marjorie. So did the first 3 rows. The words did not solve anything, but they gave the choice back to the person from whom it had been taken. Lily nodded once, tiny and terrified. Daniel looked down from the booth. "There's still one file attached to the cue sequence," he said. "It has the donation video and the booth audio together." Mr. Callahan faced the screen. Vivian stood slowly, old phone closed in her palm, eyes fixed on the frozen file name. Marjorie whispered, "Please don't." And as Daniel moved the cursor over the final recording, the entire auditorium leaned toward the truth it could no longer send backstage. The final recording opened on the side screen with no music, no title card, and no room for Marjorie Vale to soften it. First came the booth camera, grainy, high above the soundboard, time-stamped 6:42 p.m. The young audio assistant sat at the console, shoulders tight. Marjorie stood beside him with the cream-colored folder held against her chest. Her voice crackled through the booth audio, thin but clear enough for every velvet seat in the auditorium to hear. When she freezes, go to the scholarship video. Keep her mic out of the house, but keep the capture running. Donors respond when they feel the silence. The room did not gasp. It stopped. The kind of silence that follows truth is different from the silence that follows fear. It has weight. It presses down on the carpet, on the polished wood, on the rows of children who had laughed because the adults had taught them where cruelty could hide. The projector hummed. Someone's phone buzzed once, then went unanswered. A program slipped from a parent's lap and whispered against the floor. Marjorie did not move for 3 full seconds. Then her hand reached toward the folder as if paper could still protect her. "That was taken out of context," she said, but her voice had gone dry at the edges. Daniel, up in the booth, paused the video without being asked. On the screen, Marjorie's frozen face looked down at the muted channel labeled L. Heart. Her finger lifted in that small command that had turned a child's voice into a fundraising prop. Mr. Callahan removed his glasses. He did it slowly, like a man needing both hands empty before admitting what he had seen. "Principal Vale," he said. "Step away from the podium." Marjorie turned toward the audience, searching for sympathy, for procedure, for the familiar softness of people who wanted ugliness resolved quickly so dinner could still be served. But no one came to her rescue. Not the donors. Not the teachers. Not the students who had laughed. The laughter was gone from their faces now, replaced by the shame of recognizing they had joined a story someone else had written. Noah Bennett stood beside the side stairs, hands open, grease still dark beneath his nails, the old service label on the cracked silver microphone visible from where he stood. He did not smile. He did not look at Marjorie like an enemy defeated. His eyes were on Lily. She had not cried. Not yet. She held the microphone with both hands and the folded sheet music against her ribs, breathing as if the room had become too large to survive. Eli slipped one hand into Noah's from behind the curtain. Noah squeezed once. That was all. "The equipment was not broken," Mr. Callahan said to the room. "The student was muted. The board will preserve the recording, the service log, the cue sheet, the donor video, and all related files for independent review." Marjorie's folder slid from her hand and struck the stage floor with a flat, helpless sound. Vivian Hartwell rose from the front row. There was no performance in the way she stood. No outrage dressed for cameras. Just grief, controlled by a woman who had learned that power without restraint could become another kind of harm. "Before anyone says another word about Lily," Vivian said, "the donation appeal stops now. No footage of her will be used. No file will be deleted. No staff member will speak to her without a child advocate or board representative present." Marjorie turned pale. "Vivian, you don't understand the full history." Vivian's mouth tightened. "I am beginning to." She stepped only to the edge of the aisle, not onto the stage, keeping distance from Lily as if respect itself had become a boundary line. Then she opened the old phone in her palm. The small gold music note sticker on the back caught the light. "There is one more thing," she said, and her voice softened so much the room leaned in to hear it. "But this belongs to Lily before it belongs to any of us." Noah looked at her then, and something unspoken passed between them. "Be careful." Vivian understood. She did not announce what the hospital tag might mean. She did not claim the girl in public. Instead, she pressed play for 3 seconds. A fragile voice came through the old phone. Not Lily's, not quite Vivian's present voice either, but younger, tired, tender, humming the first line of the song written on Lily's folded paper. The same rise, the same fall. Then the recording stopped before it could take the moment from the child standing on stage. Lily stared at the phone. Her hand went to the scratched music note pendant at her throat. The little hinge clicked faintly in the microphone, and that tiny sound carried through the backup line Noah had kept open. Marjorie heard it too. She glanced toward the booth, one last instinctive look toward control. Her fingers lifted, barely, toward the assistant. Daniel saw it. The camera saw it. Half the auditorium saw it. Noah did not block her. He only reached to the side rack and kept the backup analog line open, the plain old cable that did not care about presets, donor segments, or polished lies. Lily looked at him. "Can I still sing?" she whispered. Noah's throat tightened, but his answer was steady. "Only if you want to." Lily looked at Vivian, who stood very still in the aisle. Vivian did not nod too hard. She did not beg. She simply placed one hand over her heart and waited. Lily looked at Eli, and the boy gave her the smallest thumbs up from behind the curtain, the kind children give when they are scared too but trying to share courage. Then Lily lifted the cracked silver microphone. The first note trembled. A few people held their breath, afraid even breathing might break it. The second note found the rafters. By the third, the auditorium was no longer a room full of donors and staff and students. It was a place being washed clean by a voice no one had permission to own. The song was not loud. It did not need to be. It moved through the speakers with a raw, aching purity, carrying the words from the folded sheet music, carrying the hurt of a child who had nearly been made into an example, carrying something older than the school, older than the fundraiser, older than Marjorie's careful smile. Vivian covered her mouth. Tears slipped between her fingers, but she did not interrupt. Noah stepped back into the shadow near the curtain, his hand still on Eli's shoulder, letting Lily stand alone in the center of her own song. When Lily reached the final line, Vivian's old phone screen lit again by accident or mercy, the unfinished voice memo waiting in her palm. Lily sang the missing ending, a line that had never been released, never printed in any program, never taught in any school choir. Vivian whispered, almost without sound, "I wrote that in the hospital. It was never published." That was when the room went completely silent. Not embarrassed silent. Not confused silent. Reverent silent. The silence of people realizing a child they had laughed at had been carrying a truth none of them were worthy to rush. Marjorie lowered her eyes from the camera for the first time all night. Mr. Callahan closed the cream folder and handed it to Vivian's assistant to preserve. Lily lowered the microphone, shaking but still standing. Justice had begun, but it had not healed the wound yet, and in the quiet that followed, every eye turned toward Noah Bennett, wondering what a man who had just been proven right would choose to do with the power he never asked for.